So we have to move on with the third speaker, Michael Hehenberger, who studied physics in Vienna in Austria and then moved to Sweden to obtain his Ph.D. in quantum chemistry from Uppsala University. Spent a few years in the United States as visiting associate professor, came back to Stockholm in 1985 and joined IBM, where he initiated academic partnerships in computational chemistry and biology, structural engineering, computer networks, and high-performance computing. At the end of 2013, Dr. Hehenberger retired from IBM research and started the NanoMed partnership, where he has been focusing on writing books and advising clients on nanomedicine. And we're very much looking forward to his presentation called Nanomedicine, Science, Business, and Impact.
Thank you. I was here the first time 4 years ago, and I gave a presentation on DNA sequencing. Beat Löffler asked me to review the current status. And then I was invited subsequently by a publisher to write a book about that, something like $1,000 genome. But when I started writing the book, I felt it would be better to choose a little broader subject, and that's really the subject here, and this is the book I have written. It's actually available now at Amazon. Actually, this week it's going to be shipped. And I decided to write about science, about business, and then the most important thing is impact. So let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to talk about impact, and I'm going to give you a few examples that kind of mix the science with the business, but also go into areas like ethics and funding. This is really a summary of the process. So you're starting at the left-hand side. You're really starting with research. It's mostly academic, but also industrial research. And you get many ideas, and those ideas will generate intellectual property that then can be used as a basis for going into commercialization, which is really the start of the business. So you have to protect your IP, you have to do a proof of concept, you have to demonstrate to your investors that this has potential, this idea has potential. And you need financial support. First, you needed financial support from government or from whoever makes decisions about funding of research. But then you have to show the value of your idea for commercialization. Then you have to get regulatory approval, and then your financial support, whoever gave it, will of course wants to have a return on the investment. So you need to have some kind of exit, which means you do an IPO, initial an offering that goes to the stock exchange, or you be acquired by a bigger company. And that's really a necessary criterion for moving away, being successful with the commercialization and creating a product. But that's not enough. In order to create impact, you need to get agreement by the whole healthcare ecosystem that this is of value for the patient. And that's really the ultimate goal. So you need acceptance by the payers, by whoever pays health insurance, the providers, the doctors, the hospitals, and you have to be accepted by medical practice, which is a very difficult thing if you want to make a change. If you want to have something new introduced into medical practice, standard medical practice, that's a big commitment by the ecosystem. But only then you have created impact. So the definition of impact is then it's the successful translation of a scientific breakthrough into clinical care of patients, and includes adoption by the medical community, and in particular it includes the willingness by the health insurance to recognize the benefit and actually pay for that. So let me, and this is just another way of showing that. This is the healthcare ecosystem. I mean, you see it has all those players around the patient or the consumer in the middle, because now we actually want to all include preventive care, so we actually we're not just focused on patients anymore. Give you an example that really had impact. And I'm coming back to the topic I started with, it's genetics sequencing. So the Human Genome Project went on from 1988 to 2003. And it's interesting to look at the statistics. The United States funded 54% of that. UK 33%, Japan 7%, France 3%, Germany 2%, and China 1%. Those were the contributing countries to the Human Genome Project. It was initiated in the United States, but the whole world participated. And there is a report that has been issued by the US government. It's very interesting reading, showing what was the return of that investment. Was it a good idea to do that? And US actually invested $3.8 billion. You see sometimes the number 3 billion, but this is a detailed report, and it goes until the year 2003, and the number is 3.8 billion, divided between the Department of Energy, which really started the whole thing, and NIH. But NIH put up 2.8 billion. So you have that, and if you are interested to read more, you can also get my book. But the interesting thing is, what was the impact? And you see, the objectives were in 88 to find all the genes. We believed it was 100,000. So many things that had to be corrected. But there also was a decision made to address the ethical, legal, and social issues, which was very important. And the return of the result of that report, return on investment, this project has created more than 3.8 million jobs in the United States. And this is a US-specific report. So it only addresses about half the funding, a little more than 50% of the funding, as I showed you before. The output, the economic output for the United States, close to $800 billion. There's tax revenue. But in any case, the return on investment, every dollar invested by the government returned $141. Now, you may have to take those numbers with a grain of salt. It's very difficult to be precise with those evaluations and analysis, but it is really impressive. I think it shows that a well-managed project funded by government can really make big impact and create a lot of return on investment. And those are the application areas. You see, there's genomic and medicine now emerging more and more. It's also in agriculture and food. It's in environment, animal health, biopharmaceutical industry, of course, even if may have been a little bit overhyped in the beginning. Forensics, justice, security as well. So I think it's a very good example of how you go from research to something that has impact. Ethics, I don't have much time to spend on that, but it's important that there was the Belmont report, which in the United States, 79, that really is still the kind of, everything is measured by the outcome of that report, and it has those three big components. You have the respect persons, it's called autonomy, which leads to informed consent and privacy. You have to create beneficence, which is really the Hippocratic no harm, the maxim, do no harm. and the third is justice, so that there's a minimum standard of care and there's equity of access to services and so on. It also addresses animal experiments. So ethics is very important, in particular bioethics, and it has been taken seriously by the Human Genome Project, and it's one of the reasons why it succeeded in the public view. I give you a few other examples, and I don't have time to, because I really treat it in detail in this conference, but I just want to go through them quickly and say what is the impact of nanomedicine and research on those areas so far. I would say in cancer, we're really approaching now impact. In particular, when it comes to targeted delivery of chemotherapy, and now this new area, which is the next big area of investment, is precision medicine, which is based on genomics, transcriptomics, metabolomics. So it's the new omics view, and it's really going to allow doctors to make detailed diagnostic tests and treat patients according to the test results. Another area is stem cells, regenerative medicine. Extremely promising. You see all the areas that we believe we can address. So we can go to Parkinson's disease, spinal cord injury, diabetes, and so on and so on. So we have enormous opportunities in the area of stem cells. But I would say the impact still needs time. Neuroscience is another one where I think the diagnosis maybe is more closer to impact than the treatment. In particular, when it comes to, so we can do imaging, but when it comes to actually treating patients in areas like Alzheimer's and so on, we are still far away from impact. Immunotherapy, this is a very promising area, but a lot of promise, but I think the impact still needs to be confirmed. I would say that if you talk about the immune system, the area of, as we heard this morning, diabetes, metabolic disease is an area where also nanomedicine has a lot of opportunity, although the speaker did not mention it at all. But there's also impact coming by delivery and drug delivery, and also by projects like the artificial pancreas. But that's, again, beyond the scope of my short presentation. What I would like to close with is to go back to the funding. Because I said impact is really a necessary requirement to go back and close the circle and incent governments, but also private organizations to fund more research. So if you don't have impact, people are going to lose interest in the research. So we have to create that impact. And what is happening right now, as opposed to what happened with the Human Genome Project that started in the 1980s, where the government did everything, that we have now reached a new, we are in a new trend where government is diminishing the contributions, and you have more coming from private people, foundations in particular. And this is a table that I researched for my book, and it really shows here that there's so much going on, and it's accelerating right now. So you have in areas like basic research, like cancer research, infectious disease, all those medical areas, you have foundations stepping up and putting funding up. And the biggest one, of course, is the Gates Foundation, but which is not just for research, so a lot of public health. But in many disease areas where, say, billionaires that have a lot to spend, have some personal interest, have some problem in the family, somebody has a disease, and they're willing to step up and put up money. And the thing that is most comparable right now to the Human Genome Project is the brain research activities that are now funded by the US government and also in Europe. The funding for this new brain project is 50-50 coming from US government and from private foundations and donors. Like, for instance, the Paul Allen project, and there's the McGovern Institute for Brain Research. There's a lot going on in Allen Institute Brain Science, $500 million. That's the amount of funding. This is quite significant, and it really is something that helps now governments to say keep the levels flat and maybe even decrease them to ensure the future of our area. So again, but the point I want to make is impact is extremely important, and without impact you can't close the circle and go back to the funding of new research.
Thank you.
Yep.